Public Service Association is laying out plans for strike action. Let's listen in.
So to announce our program of action in terms of how we intend dealing with this impasse moving forward, and also to disclose some of the issues that we came across, which basically makes PSA to believe that the whole wage negotiation process that we undertook in the public service was in fact a farce. It was a staged process that it has no value. It was done with the sole aim to arrive to where we are now, where an agreement that is not in the interest of the public servants was signed. So we will be able to obviously deal with any questions that you may have. But for now, I'm going to hand over to the General Manager of the PSA to read out the official statement of the PSA as far as this matter is concerned. Jim.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Thank you very much for coming and to get our point of view on this matter. I'm reading from a media statement which you are also going to have. We're going to give it to you. And it goes like this. The PSA has served both the Department for Public Service and Administration and the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA, with strike notices to commence on the 11th of June 2018, based on these employees' failure to present their employees with reasonable salary offers. I have, during a media statement on 6 June 2018, explained the PSA's position related to impending strikes in the public service and SASSA. We then declared a dispute in the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council, the PSCBC, based on the realization that the employee was negotiating in bad faith and prolonging the negotiation process unduly. This process should have been concluded earlier, with a view that salary adjustments are effected as from 1 April of each year. Public servants became increasingly frustrated about the delayed process. The PSA declared a dispute in the PSCBC on the failure to reach an agreement. The disputes were conciliated on the 14th of May 2018 and on 23rd April in SASSA. Certificates of non-resolution was issued. The wage dispute was also referred for arbitration in the PSCBC on behalf of essential services employees who cannot embark on strike action. Reflecting on the negotiation process since its beginning, it is becoming more evident that the negotiations may have been a staged process between the state and the employer. Its alliance partners, the COSATU affiliated unions, and even the General Secretary of the PSCBC, a previous representative of a COSATU affiliated union, POPCRU. These alliance partners may not have anticipated the response from the PSA in this process. Looking back at the items contained in the initial demand from COSATU and the final response from the employer at the conclusion of the negotiation process, it is very clear that the outcome was already anticipated. Only a few matters raised by the Independent Labour Caucus, that is the ILC, of which the PSA is part, were included in the final offer. When the previous Minister for the Public Service and Administration, Ms. Faith Mutambi, made an offer on the 26th of January 2018, it was rejected by Labour, which included the COSATU affiliated unions. Yet the final offer was less favourable from the one table on 26 January 2018 that was accepted by them. It was unfortunately also those unions that have initially questioned the PSA's continued participation in the negotiation process after it declared a dispute instead of the employer. It was also them who decided at the last meeting to adjourn council on the 18th of May 2018, after the employer raised its concern that the PSA has served it with a referral for arbitration and yet to continue to participate in negotiations. This, merely to ensure that the PSA is excluded from the finalization of the agreement, whilst they were having bilaterals with the employer and tabled the finalized draft agreement in council on 21 May 2018. What is evident of the alleged collusion is that the General Secretary of the PSCBC has issued a response to the PSA's notice to embark on a strike, which was served in terms of the provision of the Labour Relations Act, as amended, to consider withdrawing its notice. In his correspondence, he is implying that the PSA's notice may be premature based on the negotiation process. This correspondence is based on the same sentiments as expressed in the media statement issued by the employer. The General Secretary conveniently in his correspondence neglected to indicate that the PSA has declared a dispute, had a conciliation, and received a certificate of non-resolution in terms of the Council's dispute resolution procedures. It was also not mentioned that the PSA made a referral for an essential service arbitration for those employers who cannot embark on strike action. Yet never, during any of these dispute resolution processes, did the General Secretary raise any concerns with the process that the PSA is embarking on, and in fact, responded in council that all the processes are permitted in terms of law. The same scenario unfolds as SASSA, with an employer that is unwilling to recognize the salary needs of employees serving the most vulnerable citizens of our country. The PSA will not be intimidated by anyone or back down when it comes to public sector employees' legitimate demands for a living wage. I thank you.
Thank you very much, GM. Now, colleagues, basically what we find ourselves, you would have seen the media statement that was issued by the Minister of Public Service and Administration, basically trying her level best to demobilize our members by making subtle threats about the legitimacy of this strike action. Obviously, we're not expecting the department to allow PSA for going on strike. However, we also notice the kind of hypocrisy that this minister is displaying. When these unions who signed or who are saying that they're going to sign this agreement were thrashing hospitals, she never said a word, not even a word of caution. When property was destroyed by the same unions, she has never said a word. And this kind of a hypocrisy, it is the hypocrisy that is eating out the fiber of morality of our country. Politicians and politics cannot be used for purposes of taking the public servants and the public for granted. And as the PSA, we are simply saying that what we are fighting for is a fight for legitimacy, a legitimate fight that is based on principles. The PSA, yes, as Nehawu, breathing president, said, that we are not pro-strikes. We don't have to strike when there's no need for a strike action. But we've been forced into this particular position. We also understand the economic situation of our country. We also understand the fact that the country needs some level of stability. But it is the same state that has marginalized and excluded PSA from any engagement of none whatsoever. And they've made it a point that they go on a campaign to try and make PSA to look like we are just trying to offset something that is legitimate. One should ask a simple question. Why would any union sign an agreement that says public servants should get lesser increases? And with the third year, some of them not even getting any other increase, except when all this was done behind closed doors because they want to legitimize the process that will lead into the discourse of elections next year. We are not involved in politics, and we cannot allow our members to be used for political expediency. And we are saying to all the public servants, this strike is not the strike only of the PSA, it's the strike of the public servants. And we are calling upon all of them to come out in their numbers to show this minister and to show these sellout unions that they will not allow a situation that they are going to be used for political expediency. They take their members out on strike to say Supra must go. They take their members on strike for any other thing except what benefits those particular members. And one of the things that are fundamental is the fact that they've stopped listening to what the public servants require. And as the PSA, we're saying that we need to change the discourse of trade unionism. We need to change the discourse of legitimacy of trade unions in the country. Unions cannot be used for political gains. Unions are there to serve the interest of the workers, and that voice, even if it remains the last voice, will be the voice of the PSA. Thank you very much. I'm now going to allow you for any questions that you may want to ask as far as our media statement. Yes, ma'am.
Swati from Jacaranda FM. I just want to know, you spoke of intimidation by the minister. What exactly has she done?
Well, if you read the statement of the minister, she is insinuating that the PSA has gone out of the agreed rules. This thing that they're pointing about the 21 days, this 21 days needs to be clarified. It's got nothing to do with dispute resolution. Our dispute was done in terms of the Labor Relations Act. And the Act is very clear to say that if you are in dispute with any employer, especially when coming to salaries, all that you have to do is to go and get a non-resolution certificate, of which we got. They came to the conciliation. We tried to reason with them. We could not agree. Then we received a certificate. And we complied with the law, and we gave them 7 days notice for a strike action. Now she comes to try and confuse the whole situation to say that the 21 days, which is part of the council processes, binds the PSA to stay put and not go on strike until the expiry of the 21 days. And that is nonsense. And this is the same statement that the Secretary of Council is trying to punt to say that, but PSA, withdraw your strike notice until 21 days. Why should we? Because we have never indicated that we are going to sign this agreement. We have never agreed to anything in that particular agreement. So we are not bound by any process that is not a legal process. And if the minister, and this is for her, if she believes that this strike that the PSA is about to embark on is illegal, let her take us to court and let's see the outcome. Any other question? Yes, and then on the other side.
All right. The DG has also come speaking to us earlier, saying that, well, they shot with just a small percentage to reach the 50% that they need, and that they're going to move ahead whether you're on board or not. So what's the response to that?
Well, they've removed us on board long time ago. We've never been on board as far as they are concerned. They didn't want us to be part of these negotiations. Yes, currently they are sitting on 48%, which means that the only union that can sign and make this agreement, a binding agreement, is NEHAU. We dare them to go and sign. Yes, ma'am.
First question, how many members do you anticipate will participate in Monday's Day of Rage? Secondly, what impact do you think it will have on public services if it goes ahead? And then just to follow on from the previous question, I'm going to read something the Minister has tweeted, citing the interview on SABC with the acting DG. She says the acting DG outlines the processes that are followed at the Bargaining Council and explains that the PSA is in violation of the processes. Therefore, their strike is unprocedural and will not happen. She's saying that Monday's Day of Rage will not happen. What's your reply?
My reply is exactly what I said. I dare her. Let her take us to court. Because the only place where this strike can be stopped is through a court action, or if Nehau decides to sign this sell-out agreement. As far as we are concerned, we are forging ahead with our strike action, and we are going to continue and make sure that it becomes a success. In as much as they are trying with this propaganda media statements and using the council also to demobilize our members, we are working on the ground to make sure that it becomes a success. Now, in terms of how much people we're expecting disruption. It's not about the numbers who are going to come and march. We are expecting disruption. We are expecting to close down all the border gates of this country. We are expecting our former president to stay put. Nobody's going to prosecute him anytime soon because we are withdrawing all our prosecutors from prosecuting anybody in this country. We are closing down the Department of Water Affairs where we have the majority. So our disruption is going to hit where it matters the most. We are not going to call on health workers to go on strike. That is a very irresponsible thing to do. That is why we have gone an arbitration route as far as those. But we are going to deal with the economic aspects of this country so that they can feel the pinch that this strike will come up with. Cyril Ramaphosa's aim to try and raise money, that thing is going to be a pipe dream if this strike continues. Because for each day that we're on strike, this country is going to lose billions because of property and things will never be able to move in and outside of the country. Tourism will be affected. So we're going to make sure that the strike is asserted where it matters the most. So members of the media, if you intend to travel anywhere, cancel your tickets because you won't be able to travel. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Yes, this is from Voice. On your last statement, you mentioned that you were still hoping that you'll go back to the negotiation table. Do you think there's still room for that at this stage?
We are for negotiations, and that is why we are now going to fight for the legitimacy of the PSABC. PSABC cannot be used as a stage. It must be a legitimate body. We are open for that. We have written to the minister on many occasions about many other things. She has never even acknowledged receipt of any of our correspondences. If tomorrow she calls us back to the negotiations, we'll be there. But if she doesn't, obviously, we are left with no other alternative. We'll stay in the cold, but our toy-toying will warm us up. Yes, ma'am.
Brian Sakuta from The Citizen. Have you reached out to other trade unions to ensure that you speak with one voice? And also what happens if now signs the deal?
Yes. We have reached out to other unions, and as you would know, Hospesa, NUPSO, NATU, SAPU, they've rejected this agreement, which is a good thing. That is why they are unable to get the majority. Now, the implication of Nehau signing this agreement is that the agreement will be binding on the PSA. Then in terms of the law, we cannot go on strike. That will be unfortunate. But then we would have been defeated and will accept defeat. But the defeat, it will not be in the hands of the employer. We would have been defeated by unions who rolled when the employer said they must roll.
Can I just mention that the arrogance of this minister has angered public servants, not only PSA members, but public servants. And this is unfortunately what's going to happen. They're going to bear the brunt of the high-handed approach, the cold shoulder of a union that wants to stand up for its members. This is not about showing power or show off and fighting against other unions. It is just a slap in the face kind of increment. The 3-year deal, which we cannot accept. And for her to come down a little bit from a throne to understand what the workers are feeling, that will be the best thing for her to do before Monday.
There was a hand there.
Any vague estimate on numbers, just as a final follow-up on that? And then, in terms of the demands, what would it take for the Minister to do between now and Monday to resolve things to a point where the strike wouldn't happen? What would you need on the table from the Minister and her team to warm you up without having to toy-toy?
Yeah.
On the issue of numbers, the employer may be mistaken to believe that only PSA members are entitled to strike. Any employee in the employer's business that are frustrated and that are in dispute about this demand, and it will be remaining in a current demand until such time that the majority sign the agreement, is entitled to strike. So technically, we may have 1.3 million members or employees on strike. It's unlikely that we will get that numbers, but it will be confusing to believe that only PSA members are frustrated. There are also members of other unions that are not signing that are frustrated, and there are even members of unions that have already signed the agreement that are very frustrated, and we expect all of those members to join the strike action. On what will be necessary to resolve the dispute, obviously our demands are very clear. The Minister will have to come to the party to show a commitment to negotiate and to move on the demands that the PSA has set. It doesn't seem like a likelihood that that will happen. We've heard again this morning of the Minister's arrogance, where she refers to the majority that she already has, who have not yet signed the agreement, but with that kind of confidence, we don't expect the Minister to come to the bargaining chamber before Monday.
Any other question? Yes.
Just how big is the PSA membership?
Well, the PSA membership currently we are sitting on 242,000 members.
And growing.
I feel like you've been given a bad hand every time. You've got Minister Faith Ntombi, sorry, Anton Meyer from Victoria. Minister Faith Ntombi, you now have Minister Ayanda Lolo. Is there maybe a discussion with government to look at the political appointment or the political head to replace her maybe? Would you call for that?
Well, one of the things that the mere fact that she doesn't like us, it's not like we like her anyway, it's not an issue for us. The issue here is that she's got responsibility, and she cannot abrogate her responsibilities. As a minister, she must look at what is in the interest of this country. And currently, these people are not looking what is in the interest of this country. The inconvenience is for the economy and ordinary people, and they don't care. Well, they've never showed any love for the people of this country. And this kind of behavior, unfortunately, is going to spiral into things that will be unfortunate for all of us. And we need to make sure that these people are held accountable. And the only way to hold them accountable, we need those silent voices to come out in their numbers. We cannot allow the status quo. Being in power, it doesn't mean that you should be abusive in that power position. But we are not going to call for her sacking. What we're going to do is we are going to age her. By the time she leaves that office, she'll be so grey, it will be unbelievable. Any other question?
Just one last.
Yes.
Some of the reporting about the negotiations that have gone back for months speak about pressure that the department is under because of Treasury's own constraints. And we know you've referred to President Cyril Ramaphosa. We're going into a period that's been characterized as much more prudent in terms of government spending. In that climate, how hopeful are you that your demands are feasible and are something that is actually fair to ask of the Minister and her team at this point?
You see, one of the things that negotiations are supposed to achieve is the level of transparency, but we are dealing with a lot of secrecy. You see, you cannot come to us and say that you don't have money, but you are not opening up your books to say that, guys, here are my constraints. Not once in these 9 months have they ever came with figures in terms of where they stand. Now, how do you persuade anybody if you don't give them facts? We are not unreasonable. We kept on telling them that You must bring us facts. Tell us, where are your constraints? Are you bankrupt? That's why you are dipping into our pension funds. Let us understand so that we can see what we can do for you. But as it stands, we have nothing to work on, and we don't even have a partner to speak to. So it makes it very difficult. So we are sitting between a rock and a hard place as the organization, and they are in front of us. And the only way out of it is to go through them. They have left us with no alternative. Any other question? Okay, thank you very much. We'll be around if you want one-on-one with the general manager in terms of those interviews and further questions. We'll be able to clarify it. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you.
A stern warning from the PSA on its strike. It says it's given notice of intention to strike on the 11th of June, also promising to cripple several sectors in the public service industry, in particular saying that it will close down South Africa's borders. It will make sure that people won't be able to leave. Also, the court system will be affected, as well as the Water Affairs Department, targeting that specifically. What they did say, though, is that the health workers will not join the strike because they understand it is a sector that cannot go on strike and would be against the laws of the country.